Hey everyone, it's Jamie. I just wanted to address a question that I get far too often, and that's, do I have to obey a law enforcement officer just because they tell me to do something? Well, it's a two-part inquiry that you have to make for yourself. The first part is whether or not they're detaining you. In other words, they're ordering you to do something, which if they're ordering you, they're seizing your person, or whether they're just trying to intimidate you, which is more often the case. Police try to intimidate people into giving up their rights and into doing things. Simply by saying, oh, would you mind if I do this, or please do that? Because police can legally lie to you. That's really scary. But that's kind of the first thing you have to look at is, are they actually ordering you, or are they just trying to, play games with you? The second part is that even if an officer in their, mentality look at the situation, even if they think, oh yeah, you should be doing something, if they are not in the legal right, in other words, they don't have the lawful authority, they can say things, but that doesn't mean you have to follow it. The question then is only, are you willing to face the consequences? And so if an officer, says, oh, move over here, do this or that, they might actually have the legal authority to do so, but can you take on that risk of, being possibly arrested? And, a state like mine, if you are arrested, even if it's unlawful, you are supposed to, at least in the legal world, submit to the arrest and the booking procedures as well, which is really scary to think about. But that's something you're going to have to think about, and that is that you might be able to beat the rap, but you may not be able to beat the ride. So, as a whole, you can't just have contempt of cop. That's just not a charge. You have rights, still somewhat in America, and those rights trump an officer's wanton, desires or needs, or, oh, they want to feel safe. They feel safer you didn't have your hands in your pockets. Well, the reality is that they can't make you do anything that they don't have the lawful authority to do. And so, generally speaking, there's very little that they can do absent an arrest, realistically, or without a warrant. There is very little. And, one of the common things you're going to see are like DUI stops. Those are so limited in scope. DUI stops, a lot of people get confused. They can't be requiring you to give them a driver's license. They can't be requiring you to give them information, because their only purpose, at least legally, constitutionally, as the Supreme Court has ruled, is to get whether or not someone is going to be drunk driving. And that's it. And it has to be brief, and then it has to be over. But police will try to fish and fish and fish for information. So people often get confused. They think, oh, if I don't answer a police officer's questions, or if I, don't talk, they're going to get me. Or, if I don't, move a certain way, they're going to get me. But the reality is that people just don't understand. There are police out there, I'd say actually the majority, because that's their training. I've seen it. Their training is to get people to give up their rights and to give up their, Fourth Amendment rights to themselves and their property at any cost, basically. And maybe along the way there'll be some collateral damage. It's your prerogative to set yourself up and know your rights, and possibly to take on that risk afterward, because you might get arrested. If you get arrested, then you're going to be facing, trying to make a probable cause argument before a judge, saying they don't have enough probable cause to, for you to be prosecuted. You might have to do a motion to dismiss. You might have to even take a trial. But that's something you have to think about, when you're facing these things. And then, kind of like tying this all back, that we have this background of, oh, do I have to obey a law enforcement officer just because they say to, do something? As ridiculous as that would be, if they told you to grab your crotch and scream like Michael Jackson, you'd be like, that's ridiculous. But that goes all the way down. If an officer said, oh, yeah, I want you to just step over here, or step over here, or take your hands in your pockets, well, they may not have the legal authority to do that. And it doesn't make it, and they might try to arrest you, but it doesn't mean it will stick. It's just a risk you have to take. And when an officer does screw with you and screw with your rights, you can always try suing them under state law, under federal statutes. You have civil suits for deprivation of rights, 42 U.S.C. 1983. Those are, long, complicated processes, but, there are some state law. If you can overcome that sovereign immunity, Fourth Amendment violations, excessive force, battery and assault, there's might be other state law protections regarding to fundamental rights that you could sue upon. I mean, and that's the reality is, when it comes to these things, do I have to obey a law enforcement officer? A lot of times it's not so much whether or not the police officer is in the right. The question is are you willing to stick up for your rights and potentially face the consequences for doing that? You maybe get rewarded at the end. You may be able to win a couple lawsuits, get lots of media attention, expose police corruption. But, that's something you have to think about. But as long as you know your rights and know good lawyers and have, the money to take care of that, then that might be something for you. So I hope that kind of helps clarify, do I have to obey law enforcement officers? They have to have the lawful authority first. They don't just get a free pass like contempt of cop, if you, don't do everything an officer says, therefore, that's unlawful. No, well, he might arrest you, but it doesn't mean that it was lawful, and it can mean severe penalties and punitive damages, potentially, if a lawsuit then is filed thereafter. All right, thank you so much, everyone. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.